Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. I hope everyone had a beautiful Shabbat, and it's great to be with all of you. Sorry about the postponement of last week's Jewish course of why, but thank God it was for a good reason, as our daughter Malka got engaged and we were in New York celebrating. But thank God we're back now and looking forward to this next course in the installments of the Jewish course of why. So, like every week, we're going to try to tackle 5 different questions and give us some food for thought about these questions. Some of these questions are questions maybe you've thought about or heard other answers to it, but we'll try to readdress them. And again, someone says the mic is not on. Could everyone hear me? Yes? Okay, good. So if you have any questions as the class goes on, feel free to put it in the chat box, and when it pops up, I'll try to address it as well. So the first question we're going to discuss today is the question of conversion. Why is it that Judaism does not seek converts? As you know, Judaism is one of the oldest religions, older than Christianity, older than Islam. But yet, while Islam has over 1 billion adherents and Christianity has over 2 billion adherents, the Jewish people still remain at a very small number of approximately 13 million Jews in the world, which we know is less than 0.2% of the population. And the question is, why have we not grown by leaps and bounds? Why are we not, if we're the oldest religion, then we should be the largest religion, logically. And there are many, many reasons why this is the case. Obviously, all the persecution over the generations, just in our generation, the Holocaust murdered and wiped out 1/3 of our people, just in our generation, 70 years ago. But the answer also, to some degree, has to do with conversion. Judaism, as you know, as a policy, does not seek converts. Not only not through force, of course, like Christianity, where often it was, during the Spanish Inquisition or other periods where it was either accept Christianity or accept the sword. And Islam, of course, also not only seeks converts, but often torments those that do not, adhere to their rules and their religion. Judaism never, God forbid, try to impose Judaism on others. But even more than that, it doesn't even seek to recruit members to its religion. Furthermore, and this is the most astonishing thing, when someone does come along and say they want to convert, the goal of Judaism is to persuade them not to convert, to talk them out of it. As you, I'm sure, are all familiar, that the convert has to come back at least 3 times after being rejected and persist and insist that they want to become a Jew, then we finally accept them. So conversion is not something that is seeked or even readily accepted in Judaism, although we have many great converts in Judaism. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, they were all descendants of converts. Onkelos, the commentary on the Chumash, Aramaic commentary on the side of most Chumashes, was a famous, the nephew of the Roman emperor who converted to Judaism. We have many great converts, but we don't encourage it. And the question is, first of all, why not? If we believe that Judaism is the truth, why not share it with as many people? Why not encourage people? Surely if someone comes, make the path easy for them, not difficult. And second of all, the question is, wouldn't that help us boost our numbers? Every organization, every club wants to have a larger membership, because the larger your membership, the more influence you could have, the more impact you have. If we're trying to change the world as Jews, to be a light unto the nation, tikkun olam, wouldn't the best way to do that is to get as many converts as possible, so we could grow in numbers, which would mean grow in strength and in influence on the world? So why does Judaism push away the potential convert? And the first obvious thought that may come to mind is that we see all, God forbid, the tragedy of all the forced conversions, how much bloodshed that led to. When one religion says, I am the truthful religion, and therefore you must convert to my religion or else you're going to be killed. Like the various crusades and inquisitions and other acts of violence against Jews, and in Islam, of course, imposing Sharia law on others, and by forcefully, God forbid, violently killing people in the name of their God and their religion. So like this, it's sort of like a live and let live mentality. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. We're not going to try to force you to accept our way of life, because we respect your way of life, and you have the freedom to worship as you choose, which is the American system, freedom of religion. Everyone has the freedom to follow their own path. But that would only answer why we don't impose it on others. But why is it when someone comes and says, I want to convert to Judaism, why do we make it difficult for them? Why do we push them away? Why do we reject them? Why do we talk them out of it? And we say to them, what do you need this for? It's a lot of responsibility. You don't need to do this. And surely not like Christianity. Christianity says, well, there's only one way to get to heaven, and you know how to do that. You have to accept so-and-so, and then you could get to heaven. Judaism doesn't believe that. And why is that? So here we come to Judaism's belief. There is three ways in which religions operate. One is tribalism. Tribalism is there are multiple gods, and one tries to war with the other and conquer the other, and my tribe has to become the more dominant one and persuade or by force get others to accept their gods and their religion. And then you have universalism. Universalism is that the belief that there's only one God, monotheism, and therefore there's only one religion, and the whole world has to accept this universal religion. And then there's Judaism. Judaism says, yes, we believe in monotheism. We're a monotheistic faith. Abraham was the first one who introduced the monotheistic faith. But at the same time, we say there's one God, but there can be many religions. It does not have to be one religion. And not only doesn't there have to be one religion, God designed the world in a way that there should be many religions. And the best analogy, or a very simple analogy that we could also relate to this idea, is to the human body. Every one of us, thank God, has a body. And the body has many organs. There's the brain, there's the heart, there's the lungs, the kidneys, the liver, all the way down to the blood vessels and the cartilage in our knee and every part of our being. Now imagine if a person says, well, why should there be such diversity? Why don't we have all the organs the same, identical? Well, that wouldn't be a body. In order for a body to function, it needs diversity. It needs different organs fulfilling different roles and functions in the body. And the same thing in God's global body, the universe. We need different religions, different people, different nationalities, different races to perform different functions. Each one has maybe a different focus, a different priority, a different agenda, goal. And together, as a world, we achieve God's vision in the world. Now, you may say, well, why not make one organ larger? Make the Jewish people a little bigger by including converts or encouraging conversion. But that's like saying, let the heart be a little larger. Well, the heart being a little larger isn't necessarily a good thing. And certain organs, if you make them smaller, that could harm the health of the being. In other words, God created everything in its correct, proper proportion. And often people, when it comes to conversion, or when it comes to Judaism, they think, well, maybe Judaism doesn't believe in accepting converts because they believe they're superior, they're the chosen people. But the truth is that's not the case, because as a rabbi, people have even said to me, well, maybe it's racism that you think you're a superior race. But the first thing is, racism means when you treat other people poorly because you believe you're a superior race. Judaism not only doesn't treat other people poorly, on the contrary, Judaism feels that we have a responsibility to be a light unto the nations. In other words, we weren't chosen for privilege. We were chosen for responsibility to serve other people, to serve humanity, to serve our fellow mankind. So it's the opposite of racism. It's saying I was chosen because I must serve others. I was chosen, like a Jewish leader is not chosen for privilege. They're chosen for servitude, that we have to serve mankind, repair the world, dedicate ourselves to the betterment of our fellow man. But furthermore, Judaism is made up of many races, not just one race. There are Jews from Ethiopia, Jews from universally. There are Jews everywhere in the world. It's not made up of one race. And furthermore, Judaism does accept converts, which means it's not something, yes, we have many converts. Once they prove they want to convert, genuinely and sincerely, we accept them. And the reason we have to persuade the convert out of it is because the first Jews were actually converts to Judaism. Abraham and Sarah were not born as Jews. They chose it. And they had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations to become Jewish. And so this model still remains today. For most of us, Judaism is something that we were born with. It was an automatic birthright, as we say. But for Abraham and Sarah, it was something that they did not grow up with, but they chose it. And so the convert is like Abraham and Sarah. They're perpetuating the model of Abraham and Sarah, where one has to seek it on their own. And just like Abraham and Sarah sought out Judaism, sought out that path of life with God, so too the convert perpetuates that model. And so we have the model of somebody who was born Jewish, but also the Abraham and Sarah model, which in a way is a greater model that they have to choose it on their own and come to it through their own study and learning and exploration. But that is actually greater because they chose it. They chose to be chosen for responsibility. And therefore, Judaism makes it challenging because in anything valuable comes through struggle. And to test the true determination of the convert, we first try to persuade them and talk them out of it. And only when they persist and show that it's a genuine desire, that's when we accept them to Judaism. And once they convert, we refer to them as a convert who converted, as they've always been Jewish, but their path to their own Jewishness came through conversion, not through an automatic gift that was given to them. But Judaism fundamentally respects the fact that there are many other ways to serve God. There's one God, but there are many paths to get to God. And even if you look in the Torah, in 2 weeks from now, we're going to have the Torah portion of Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses. And what does the Torah say? What does the Torah say? Jethro was a Kohen Midyan, a priest in Midyan, and meaning the Torah is validating and accepting and respecting the fact that he was a priest in some other form of worship of God. It's some other religion. He ultimately converted to Judaism. So he's also an example of a convert. But before he did that, he was a priest in Midyan. There are other examples of priests in Judaism. Melchizedek, he was the Kohen in Jerusalem before Jerusalem became Jerusalem. Abraham, of course, makes a treaty with Melchizedek. Melchizedek in Genesis brings out bread and wine to greet Abraham. Until this day, there's a custom when visitors come to Jerusalem, we greet them with bread and wine because that was the tradition of Melchizedek. But our rabbis tell us Melchizedek was the king over the place of Tzedek, which was the place of Jerusalem. And he was a priest there, once again, to another religion, but the Torah recognizes his prominence. And a third example is Moses. Moses was the prophet of the Jewish people. But we know Bilam was a prophet to the Gentiles. That's why Balak tried to hire him to curse the Jews, because he had prophetic powers. And he spoke some of the most beautiful prophecies that we repeat every day in our prayers. Ma tovu alach Yaakov, mishkenotecha. That was the words of Bilam. Why do we quote him? Because he was a prophet. He was a prophet to the nations of the world. So God doesn't only give prophets to the Jewish people, he gives prophets to the nations of the world. Because again, Judaism believes there's one God, but there's not one religion. There are many religions. And we respect the other religions, and we respect the other ways of worship and serving God. And that is the true reason why Judaism does not seek conversions, because if we sought conversions, we would be implying that there's only one way to serve God, that our way is superior to theirs. And Judaism respects all religions and freedom of religion. And there are laws for Jews exclusively, and there are Jews that are laws that are universal laws, known as the Noahide laws. But the model of Judaism is that we should always respect other people's religions, other people's way of worshiping, and we should never disparage, God forbid, or undermine or disrespect, or even worse, God forbid, never try to harm another person because of their way of worship, because God says there's one God, but just like one God created such vast diversity in the world, we're all in the image of God, but yet there are so many different types of human beings, nationalities, races, cultures, lands, and throughout the world you see so much diversity. So too within religion, God says there's one God, but there's so much diversity within the ways of serving God. And that is the Jewish perspective about conversion. And the reason why Judaism traditionally has always not only not sought out converts, but even discouraged people from converting. That is question number one for today, why Judaism discourages conversion and surely does not seek to recruit converts, even though seemingly it would be beneficial for the cause of Judaism. We now go to our second question, and this is more of a philosophical question. And the question is, one of the fundamental principles of Judaism is free will, that every human being has free choice. No one is compelled to do anything. No one is predestined to do anything that has to do with morality or goodness or righteousness. Yes, certain things may be predetermined, like where you're going to be born was predetermined, or what your capabilities or skill sets are going to be, or what your IQ is going to be, or which family you're going to be born to, or what your physical appearance is going to look like. Those are things that are predetermined. But when it comes to goodness or righteousness, in other words, the choices I make in my life, that God has no power over me. God chose to give us the free will that while he controls the whole world, he doesn't control us. He gave us autonomy over ourselves. And therefore, we have free will. So no one can say, well, I had to do that. I lost control, or it was beyond my control. There's no such thing. When it comes to right or wrong, it's always within your control. And therefore, Judaism says you're always responsible for your actions. And if you make the right choices, you will be rewarded for that. And God forbid, if you make the wrong choices, there are consequences. Why? Because you have free will. And a person can say, well, my circumstances, my upbringing, my family, my whatever, my environment, my education, my personality forced me to do this because by nature, I'm this type of a person. Yes, you may have a nature that is more difficult in one area than the next. We all have our struggles. We all have our areas of challenge, but we all have free will despite what our natures may be. Even if by nature, for example, you're hot-headed and you have a hot temper, you could learn to control that temper. And if by nature you are stingy and selfish, you can learn to be generous and kind. Every nature can be overcome because we all have free will. But here's the philosophical question. The philosophical question is, we know that God has no limitations. And part of God's not having any limitations is that he knows the future. So the question is, does God know in advance the choices we're going to make? Well, the obvious answer is yes, because if we say God does not know the future choices we're going to make, that means God has a limitation and God is omnipotent. So then the question becomes, if God knows already in advance what I'm going to choose, well, that would seem to contradict the idea that I have free will, because God already knows what I'm going to do on this matter, what choice I'm going to make, what decision I'm going to make. So that means I don't have a choice anymore, because if I do contrary to God's decision or knowledge of what I'm going to do, that would mean that God was wrong, and that can't be the case either. So it's like a catch-22. If God knows the future of my choices, then I don't have free will. If I do have free will, then obviously God doesn't know what I'm going to do. So that means God has a limitation. So going back to Adam and Eve, God told Adam and Eve, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Well, they ate from the tree of knowledge. Did God know they were going to eat from the tree of knowledge? Of course, God knew what they were going to do. Well, if God knew what they were going to do, then they didn't have free will. So how can we say that God knows what we're going to do, and at the same time, we still have free will. And again, this is a question that is discussed by many philosophers, Jewish philosophers, Maimonides and others. And it's almost like the question, can God create a rock too heavy for him to pick up? If he can't, then he can't do anything. He has a limitation. If he can, that means he can't pick it up. That means he has a limitation as well. So how do we understand this? So in Pirkei Avot, it says the following. It says, "Hakol tzafui," everything is foreseen, v'hareshut nitzuna, but yet free will is given. Despite the fact that everything is foreseen by God, we still have free will. Well, how does that work? How do we understand that? So, a very basic, there's two ways to approach this question. One way to say it is as follows. Often you watch your child do something, and there's a choice presented to your child. And if I say to you, let's press pause, and I ask you as a parent, do you know what your kid is going to do right now? He has this dilemma, he has this choice. What's he going to choose to do? And as parents, very often I say, yeah, I know what he's going to do. He's going to choose this, or he's going to choose that. He's going to do the right thing, or he's going to do the wrong thing. And guess what? That's what your kid does. Now, why do you know what your kid is going to do? Because you know your kid so well that you know exactly the choice, the decision they're going to make. But here's the question. Does your knowledge in advance of what they're going to choose, does that have any bearing or any impact on the choice that your child ultimately makes? Absolutely not. They don't even know what you're thinking. Your thoughts and your knowledge and your predictions is based on your understanding of your child. And therefore, you know in advance what they're going to choose. But that doesn't have any impact on the actual decision that they make. That was their free will. You did not deny them any free will by knowing in advance what they're going to choose. So that is obviously the simple way to look at it. That we're God's children. He knows us better than any parent knows us. So he sort of knows in advance what we're going to choose, but that doesn't influence us. His knowledge doesn't impact us or propel us or compel us to make that choice. We made that choice independently, so the two are not connected. He knows, but it doesn't deny us our free will. That's number one. But it actually goes deeper than that. Part of the understanding of God being above any limitations is that one of the limitations that God created is past, present, and future. As human beings, we live within the creation of time frames. So I can't live in yesterday, and I can't live in tomorrow. I can't even live in the next hour. I could only live at right now at this very moment. I could only be in the present because I'm a human being. Just like I have physical limitations, I have the limitations of time. But God doesn't have physical limitations, and he doesn't even have limitations of time because God is above time. L'mayla min hazman, above and beyond time. And that is what it means that God is truly free because he's not even bound by the constraints of time. And there are many things that we can understand through that, like teshuvah, repentance. How can you go back and correct the past? God is above time, so he can go back and repair the past deeds that we've done. But as far as the understanding of free will, if I see someone running down the street, he's jogging. I know the guy is jogging, but my knowledge of the fact that he's jogging is not what's making him jog. He's jogging because he chose to get up and go jogging. I know he's jogging, but that doesn't impact his jogging or whatever activity he's doing. Now imagine if we were God and we could see not what the person's doing this morning jogging, but we could see what they're going to do every day this week because we're not limited by time. The future is as present as the present. So I see what he's going to do Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning and Friday morning. And I tell you, yeah, Friday morning, he's not going to go jogging. He's going to do some other activity. I know that. It's as though I'm seeing him right now because I could see the future. But that knowledge, just like when I see someone running down the street today, I know it, but it doesn't influence his choice to run. He runs because of his independent choice. God is beyond time, and therefore he is not limited by the present, and therefore he just sees the choices, what we're going to make in the future, as though it's happening right now. But his knowledge of our choices has no bearing on the choices we make. He still grants us the full free will to make the choices as we see fit. And therefore, his knowledge does not compel us in any way and deny us our free will. I'm just going to go to the questions to see. I noticed some people posted some comments or questions. Let me just read them. Question: we do things by impulse. We learn from our mistakes and learn right from wrong as individuals, taking responsibility and hold ourselves accountable. Your thoughts, our personality traits. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly the question, what you mean by the question, but if you're talking about the fact that, yes, God gives us certain traits. Every person is born with certain traits. Someone once said it this way: your talents is God's gift to you. What you do with them is your gift to God. So God gives us traits, but we still have free will how we're going to use those traits. So God may grant you success in business and you're very wealthy, but whether you're going to give charity, that's your choice. God may give you a brilliant mind, but whether you're going to use that mind to study Torah, that's your choice. God may grant you many other abilities, but how you utilize them is your choice. And that's not only true with positive traits, but even with negative traits. First of all, even negative traits can be channeled in a positive way. So for example, somebody by nature is an angry person, gets angry quickly. They could channel that anger towards evil in the world and fight evil with so much passion and fervor, because they're very quickly angered, so they get angry against the injustices of the world and stand up to it. That's one example of using a negative trait in a positive way. Or for example, a person is born very envious. By nature, they're jealous. Well, instead of channeling that envy towards people who have materialistic things, they could be envious of people who are spiritually greater. They could look at somebody, and the rabbis say, "Kinat sofrim tarba chachma." Jealousy among scholars increases knowledge. If I'm jealous and envious of the guy next to me that he has more Torah knowledge than me, and I'm going to study more, that's a positive thing. Or if I'm jealous of the guy who gives more charity than I am, I want to be the one who gives more charity. So it propels me to give more charity. People often wonder why, when you go into a synagogue, you see plaques with dedications. You know, why do you need to put up a plaque? I mean, if you go back to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem that was built by King David and then his son Solomon, or you go to the tabernacle that Moses built in the wilderness, I doubt you walked in there and you saw a plaque that said, "This ark in the Holy of Holies was dedicated by the Goldberg family," or "This beautiful window is dedicated by the Finkelstein family." But yet, go into any synagogue, and you'll see people put up plaques that they dedicated things. Well, sometimes it's to remember loved ones. So it's not about me, it's about my loved one. I want to remember my loved one. But why would a person be allowed to put up a plaque with their own name? Just to let the community know that I made this donation? And to take the question a step further, if somebody comes to a rabbi and says, "Rabbi, I'm about to give $1 million to some worthy cause. And I could do it two ways. I could do it anonymously, or I could do it with name recognition. I could name the building. I could give the $1 million and put my name on the building, or I could do it anonymously. What's the preferred way to do it?" So instinctively, impulsively, most people think, well, of course, it's better to do it anonymously because you're not getting any honor, any recognition. That's the way to go. But it's not so simple. Judaism says, the Talmud says, 4 beautiful words. Mitzvah lefarsem osei mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to publicize those who do a mitzvah. There were many times that people asked this question to the Lubavitcher Rebbe: should I do this anonymously or publicly? And the Rebbe said, do it publicly. You know why? Someone just typed in Sheldon Adelson into the box. I didn't get to read the whole comment. He just died last week at the age of 87. He was born a poor boy in a family where his father was a taxi driver, couldn't even afford to go to Israel. He had to go to Israel. New York Times had an obituary last week about him. It said that he wore his father's shoes when he went on his first trip to Israel in 1988 to bring his father's presence to Israel, his memory. His father loved Israel, gave money every day to the JNF Blue Box. And he supported Birthright amongst the many organizations because he said, I want every Jew to get the privilege and it's their birthright to go to Israel. But here's a man who gave tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to Jewish causes. Now, let's say Sheldon Adelson would have said, I'm going to do it anonymously. Nobody's going to know. So what would people say? Look at this guy, Sheldon Adelson. He's worth $34 billion. I never see him giving any charity anywhere. Now, what do people say? Wow, this guy was a huge philanthropist. He gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Jewish causes. What does that do? It puts pressure on the next billionaire or the next millionaire. In other words, when you see people, just like there's peer pressure in physical things, when your neighbor gets a new car, you feel the peer pressure to get a new car or whatever status it is for every person, So too, there are spiritual peer pressure. When I see the guy next to me is giving such amounts of charity, and I know that I have the same amount of money that he does, that makes me feel that I have to do it too. And that's why the Talmud says, mitzvah lefarsem oseh mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to publicize the people who did a mitzvah, because that will encourage others to do the same. Now, how does that work? Part of it is ego. Part of it is envy. Oh, he gets all this recognition, or she gets all this recognition for this big gift they gave to UJA or to Israel Bonds, or they were honored at this dinner. I also want to be honored at a dinner. So maybe I'm not doing it for the most altruistic reasons. Maybe I have an ego involved. My jealousy, my ego, my envy. But you know what? At the bottom line is more charity will be given, more goodness will be performed. The poor man doesn't care if you did it for recognition or honor. He cares that he has food to feed his family and to pay his bills. And therefore, the end goal is good. And the actions are more important than the motivations. And so therefore, sometimes even negative traits can be channeled in a positive way. Or a third way is that if you can't channel your negative traits in a positive way, overcoming your negative traits can give you greater strength than having never overcome the challenge in the first place. Sometimes we grow the most, just like in the gym. You grow when you pick up heavy weights. If you pick up the light weights, you don't grow your muscles. Same thing with free will. The free will, they say use it or lose it. If you don't use your free will, you lose it, like an addict. The more you give into your bad habits or your temptations, the more you become addicted to it. So the first time you picked up that drug, you had 100% free will, whether you're going to use that drug or not, or that alcohol or that cigarette or whatever addiction it is, it doesn't matter. The second time, maybe you only had 98% free will because you already tasted it once. And each time you indulge in a bad habit or in an addiction, you lose more and more of your free will until at one point you may really lose your free will, because use it or lose it. On the contrary, the more you fight your bad nature and overcome it, the stronger you get, the more resilient you get. And so sometimes the way to become really great in a field is having to toil and struggle in that area, and that brings out your greatest strength. So God gives different people different traits, and we don't understand why this one has this challenge and this one has that challenge. Whatever area of life they may have a challenge in, this relationship, that relationship, whatever it is. But the way we should view it is that if God gave us a blessing and a skill, then we have an obligation to use it for a positive purpose. And if he gave us a negative trait, we either have to channel it in a positive way or realize that this challenge is not a stumbling stone, but a stepping stone. It's meant to elevate us and bring us even higher. So let me just see if we had any questions on this second. Struggle gives us inner strength. Correct. Don't you think Judaism was less historically attractive because of the absence of the corporeal representation of God's presence? Okay, so someone went back to the first question. Yeah, there are many other reasons why Judaism is less attractive. There are commandments, there are obligations. It's not there's responsibility. You can't just accept you-know-who and be forgiven for all your sins. But that's the sense. So the first question was about conversion. The second one was about free will. I see a question now. How do you think this pandemic has affected one's free will? Increase in suicides, challenges in praying, etc. Look, that's a great example, the pandemic, because for some people, tragically, the pandemic brought out depression and suicide and drug addiction. But for others, the pandemic may have brought out more opportunity to work on themselves, self-development, self-growth, study more because they had more free time to study. So I think we've seen again how free will can go in two directions. Some people said there's a pandemic, I'm home all these hours, let me buy more alcohol and whatever, get more involved in my addictions, whatever those addictions are, online gambling or pornography or whatever else people are addicted to. And it led them down a dark, negative place, and sadly increase in depression and drug abuse and all types of problems. But I know for many people, it had the opposite effect. They said, 1 minute, now I have a moment to pause. I've been running this rat race of life. They say life is a rat race. And the problem with the rat race is that even if you're the winner, you're still a rat. So many people stopped and said, 1 minute, is this what I want to do? Just run from one thing to the next my whole life? I know many people told me, they said, before the pandemic, I would have dinner with my family, with my kids, maybe once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Now, every night, husband, wife, children, throughout the months that we were in lockdown, everyone sat down to the dinner table. And they said, I'm never going back to the craziness of missing so many family dinners because I have a business appointment, I have a dinner to go to, I have a function to go to, my family's more important. I'm not going to miss out on this wonderful opportunity to sit with my children at the dinner table. That's just one of many, many examples. Many people started learning new things, taking new courses, learning Yiddish, learning Hebrew, learning this, learning that. There's a woman in our shul, I don't know if she's on the Zoom right now, I'm not going to mention her name. She's in her 90s. She's taking university level courses on Zoom through places in Jerusalem, institutes. Some people have spread their wings and learned a lot about themselves, about life, about what's important, prioritizing. So again, every opportunity could either be as I said, a stumbling stone or a stepping stone. The stone is right in front of you. The question is, are you going to trip on it and get hurt, or are you going to use it to go higher? That's the choice we make. God presents the challenges or the opportunities. How we utilize those opportunities. Take wealth, for example. Wealth could be a great blessing or a great curse. For many people, wealth is a blessing. They use it in a good way. They become more charitable, more philanthropic. They do good things with their money. They hire more people with their businesses, and their wealth brought about tremendous blessing for others. But you and I all know that there are people who their wealth was their failure, their downfall. Whether it ruined this aspect of life or this aspect of their marriage, their relationship with their children, it led them to other problems, whatever. We in Judaism, there's an expression that says, money is the root of all evil. Don't believe that. That's not a Jewish idea. That's a Christian idea. Judaism says money could be the root of all evil, but it could just as well be the root of all good. It's what the person with the money does with the money. And that pertains to ourselves, to others, and that pertains to every area of life. So that's the fundamental principle of free will. We now come to our third question. The first one was about conversion. The second one was about free will. And now we come to the question which a lot of times, I think a lot of people think about this, but often ask this question as well. Judaism has 613 commandments. That's a lot of commandments, right? Well, obviously, they're not all positive commandments. 248 are positive, 365 are negative. Don't do this, don't kill, don't steal, don't speak gossip, so on and so forth. Now, many of the commandments don't apply today because the temple doesn't stand, and many of these commandments were only applicable during the temple times. But the most amazing thing is, why is the Talmud so vast? Why is Jewish law so vast? Because every single commandment has many, many details associated with it. I'll give you a simple example. You know where your mezuzah has to be? On the right side of your door. Where on the right side does it have to be? 3/4 in the top third of the door frame. How does the mezuzah have to be positioned? Diagonally. We won't get into why, right? How does the mezuzah scroll have to be rolled? It has to be rolled from right over left. In other words, that the Shema part is over the end. Like if you're holding the scroll like this, it has to be rolled this way, and on the outside it says Shin Daled Yud, right? I could go on and on with many, many details, and this pertains to every mitzvah, whether it's keeping Shabbos or eating kosher or putting on tefillin or keeping the Passover, right? So you have so many commandments, and each commandment has sometimes dozens or even hundreds of details, right? Now, what happens if you get one detail wrong? I go out and buy a beautiful mezuzah, but instead of printing it on parchment, it was printed on a piece of paper. It says the same words, but it's on paper. Or if I got a nice, beautiful mezuzah on parchment, but I didn't put it on the right side of the door, I put it on the left side of the door. Or if I didn't put it on the top third, I put it on the bottom third of the door frame, closer to the ground. Or if I didn't roll it the right way, I rolled it the wrong way. Instead of the letters being on the inside of the scroll, I rolled it the other way around, that the letters on the outside of the scroll. Because maybe I thought it's nicer to see the letters instead of covering the letters by rolling it with the letters on the inside. Guess what? It's pretty, if you don't know this, you're going to be shocked to hear this, but you didn't perform the mitzvah. And the question is, I went out, I bought a beautiful mezuzah, I spent $100, I put it on my door frame. Just because I put it on the wrong side or just because I put it in the wrong position, that invalidates the mitzvah? I mean, maybe I get an A for effort, but I didn't do the mitzvah. And the question is, why are there so many details in Judaism? If you really want to do the mitzvah, you got to follow all the details. And I'll tell you something else that's a little shocking, maybe, that sometimes doing it in the wrong details, not only is not a mitzvah, but it becomes a sin. I'm going to give you an example. You know, there's a time to light Shabbat candles. All the women know this, right? You look in your calendar. Candle lighting time is, this Shabbat, it was 5:31. Now there's an 18-minute buffer. So if you're running up to 18 minutes late, you're still in the time frame, right? But let's say you came home Friday night and it was 6 o'clock. And you said, candle lighting was 5:31. I had the 18 minutes buffer. That takes me to 5:39. I'm 21 minutes late, but you know what? It's Shabbat. Let me light the candles. I take out my candles. I strike the match. I light the candles. Not only didn't I do the mitzvah, I committed a sin. Why? Because one of the prohibitions on Shabbat is you're not allowed to start a fire. So when I strike that match, I violated Shabbat. So I didn't only not do the mitzvah, I committed a sin. So instead of saying, Baruch atah, bless you, God, for doing the mitzvah, I committed a sin. But that's an extreme example. But let's say I have a lulav and an esrog. And we know there's the willow, the myrtle branch, the esrog, and the lulav, the date palm tree. Let's say I have the beautiful lulav, a beautiful esrog. I have beautiful myrtles, but I don't have the willow branches. And I put 3 of the species together and I shake it. 0 mitzvah. If you don't have all 4 species, you haven't done the mitzvah. And the question is, why? Why so many details in how to perform mitzvot? And again, there are many ways to approach this question. One is a more of a philosophical way to look at it. You see, we're coming into this with our human relationship understanding, not with our godly relationship. So for example, if your wife says to you, or your husband says, do me a favor, could you go to the deli and get me a nice corned beef sandwich with mustard? And you go out and you get the corned beef sandwich, but you forgot the mustard. Well, your wife is still going to be very pleased. You went, you got her a corned beef sandwich. Okay, you forgot one detail, the mustard, but it's still a delicious sandwich, and she's very grateful that you went and got her that beautiful sandwich. She would have liked mustard, but it's still a great sandwich. She was starved. Now she's full. She's happy. Next time, try to remember the mustard. No big deal. But you did my will. I asked you to get you a sandwich. You went out, got it. Beautiful. You got the pickle, but you forgot the mustard. Okay, you get 99% credit. Okay. But let's say your wife was not hungry and she didn't need to eat, but she wanted to develop a deeper relationship with you. So she said, you know what, honey, can you go get me a sandwich? Or I'll give you a very practical example with your kids. When kids are minors, you know, sometimes you ask your kid to do something that you really don't need them to do, but you want them to learn how to listen and to be helpful. So you see, Joey, can you help me sweep the kitchen? The kid makes more of a mess than he sweeps, but the kid feels good. I helped my mommy sweep the kitchen. So the kid goes with the dustpan and the broom and pretends, whatever he's doing, he's making a mess, but it's okay. Help me clean the dishes. He's not cleaning the dishes. I got to clean it anyways, but let him feel like he's acting. It's a way for me to bond with my child, right? And same thing with relationships. I asked you to do something because I want to see your depth of connection to me and give you an opportunity to connect with me. So with the wife, you bought her the sandwich. She's very grateful. You got her a sandwich and I'm full, but it didn't taste as good. But with God, God doesn't need anything. By definition, God doesn't lack anything. So anything he asks us to do is not for his benefit. It's for us to have a connection with him, to have a relationship with him. And therefore, he so to speak, makes himself vulnerable and says, I really need this mitzvah. Can you do it for me? But if you do it as he asked you to do it, then you fulfilled his will. But if you didn't, it's not like you did 90% of his will, because he doesn't need it in the first place. He's only doing it to give you an opportunity to connect with him. And the way you connect is through this mitzvah, which he ascribes certain parameters to. So the sukkah has to be built at a certain height and has a certain amount of shade. But if you didn't do it the way he asked you to do it, you haven't made that connection. That's one approach. But here's another practical approach. And I could use many examples, but I'll use 2 examples, okay? And everyone could relate to this. There's certain things in life that, if you didn't bring the mustard, no big deal. It's still a good sandwich. But there are certain things in life that if you don't get it 100% right, you've got nothing. So I know a lot of the men was probably on the Zoom call will watch some football games today, especially in the playoffs, right? Now, I think on a football field, you have 100 yards, right? So imagine a team runs the ball down the field. They're tackling, jumping, doing everything. They keep on pushing and pushing it. And now it's the final down and the last whatever. And an incredible pass. And the guy does an incredible jump and he lands with the ball. But they can't see if it touched crossed the line into a touchdown zone. And they do a replay as they do. And they see in slow motion that it was a quarter of an inch before the touchdown line. So obviously, is that a touchdown? No. And the question is, 1 minute, they ran the ball 99 3/4 yards. He missed the touchdown line by a quarter of an inch. It's like without the camera and the replay, you wouldn't even notice it, okay? Okay, maybe he doesn't get 7 points. Give him 5 points. Give him 4 points. Give him 6 points. 0? After all that hustle down the field? And the answer is, it's either a touchdown or it's not a touchdown. No such thing as a 90% touchdown. Well, if that applies in football, it surely applies in God's laws. God says, this is the way to do the mitzvah. Well, God, I didn't get all 4 species. I got the lulav, I got the esrog, I got the willow. Give me 75% of the mitzvah. I'm sorry, it's not a touchdown, right? That's one way to look at it. Another way to answer this question is that, and by the way, this applies, the space shuttle that blew up a number of years ago, which tragically took the lives, I think, of 11 astronauts. When it came down to it, it was like this hairline fracture in one of the, I believe, in one of the wings, one of the panels. And you say, 1 minute, this spacecraft cost billions of dollars to create. And because one screw that you could buy in the Home Depot for 5 cents wasn't screwed in, the Columbia spacecraft, right? Because of one 5-cent screw, the whole spacecraft blew up in midair and 11 people had to die. I mean, come on, this thing costed billions of dollars. And the answer is, one screw that cost 5 cents in Home Depot wasn't tight on the panel, and that led to a catastrophe. When it and by the way, it's a good analogy from a spacecraft, because on the Earth, on the ground, a little screw missing wouldn't make a difference. But the higher the altitude of the spacecraft, the more important and significant each detail is. And I want you to think about that. That we look at things physically. Okay, I left out a detail of the mitzvah. I didn't do it the way I was supposed to, but I did a good deed anyway. No. Maybe on a physical plane, that detail is not that great or magnified. But the higher the spiritual altitude, as the spacecraft goes higher on the higher spiritual realms, that detail has greater and greater significance. And here's another analogy. I could sit down and compose an email. I could work 3 hours on a very complex email that I draft. And then I send you the email. And whatever your name is, Jack Goldberg at Comcast.com. And I finally send off the email, and I'm really thrilled I finished this very important email. I don't hear back from you. I call you a day later. Did you get my email? You didn't respond. You say, no, I didn't get your email. I said, what do you mean? I sent you an email. I worked on it for 3 hours. I never got it. So I go back to my mailbox and I realize, you know what happened? I wrote Jack Goldberg at Comcast.com. I forgot to put in the dot. Now I ask you a question. I worked on this email for 3 hours. I got your whole address right, Jack Goldberg at Comcast.com. I left out one little dot. And for that, my email goes somewhere in the incinerator. It never gets to you. I mean, come on, it's one little dot. Because of a dot, it doesn't get to you. It doesn't reach you. And the answer is yeah, because you see, when you look at your screen, you think it's just a dot. But if you understand the coding of the computer, what those pixels represent, if you know the back end of the computer system, you know that that dot is not just a little dot. It represents something much more significant in the delivery system of the email. And even if you got the whole email address, right, you left out the dot before com, it's worthless. It gets nowhere. It doesn't arrive where it needs to arrive. And the same thing is with Judaism. You know, we look at a deed, we say, does it really make a difference if I put the mezuzah on the left side or the right side? What's the difference? Oh, I didn't put it on the top third, I put it in the middle third. Who cares? It's like, I got it in the neighborhood, right? But just like the dot and the .com doesn't get your email delivered because you left out the dot, every dot represents something much greater. Now, just like if you want to understand why that dot not being in the email address didn't get the email delivered, you would have to learn coding and understand what it represents in the transmission of the email. If you want to understand what the dots of Judaism represent, that's why you have the Talmud, that's why you have Mishnah, that's why you have commentaries, that's why you have mysticism, that's why you have worlds and worlds of vistas to delve into, to understand what every dot, every detail of Jewish practice and tradition represents. Sadly, if we don't learn, we just think, it's just a dot. Who cares? What's the difference if I do it this way or that way? But that's why Torah study is so important, because the more you study, you start to learn, you start to appreciate what every detail of Judaism means, represents on deeper and deeper levels. And now you understand why every detail of the mitzvah is so significant. And I would just say, if you want to grow in your observance, it's the most important thing. But you can't do it without growing in your Torah knowledge, because if you don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and the impact it's having and the benefit and the reasons behind it, it's like, what difference does it make? No dot, yeah dot. You know, I did the mitzvah this way or that way. But with knowledge, it's like learning computer technology. Now I get to appreciate what I'm doing and the benefit and the importance and the significance and the reasons. So we always have to learn Torah, because Torah gives us the understanding as human beings. We need to understand what we're accomplishing, what we're achieving, because if we don't, then at minimum, it becomes a boring rote that we don't enjoy. And even worse, we don't do it because we think, what's the purpose? What's the meaning of putting on tefillin or keeping Shabbos or eating kosher or whatever it may be? So that's the other way. But I just want to finish on a positive note regarding this question, and that is that there is a verse in Song of Songs that says, V'digal alai ava, which literally means he skipped over me with love. So the Talmud explains as follows. There's a verse that says, V'ahavtas Hashem lokecha, you shall love the Lord your God. We all know it from the Shema. But the word for hatred is oyev. Ahava is love, oyev is hate. So what's if somebody skipped over the reading, they didn't read it properly, they were rushing, and they said, instead of v'ahavtas Hashem lokecha, they said v'ayaftas Hashem lokecha, which means you should hate the Lord your God. So the Talmud says, the verse says, "V'diglu alayava," that they skipped over me with love. They skipped over the pronunciation of the words. They read it too quickly. But God says, I feel like they showered me with love. Why? Because they didn't say it right, but I know their intention was good. They meant to say they loved the Lord their God. And therefore God says, well, maybe the mitzvah wasn't done correctly. The fact that they attempted to do it correctly, or they made an effort, I still feel as though I've received a love communication from that person who did the mitzvah. And so, yes, we strive for perfection and performance of mitzvot. You know, just like that, going back to that mundane analogy, the team that didn't win the Super Bowl because they missed the touchdown by a quarter of an inch, they lost the Super Bowl. That's the bottom line. They don't get a little trophy because they came in second place. They get zero. You lost. But people will still say, you know what a game. You guys played amazing. You guys were incredible. They'll get accolades. They'll get appreciation for the good fight they put up. The same thing with a mitzvah. Every attempt to do a good deed, even if it doesn't come out right, if you don't hit the mark, so to speak, you don't score, you don't do it 100%. The fact that you made an attempt, God says that's an expression of your love for me, and I feel that expression of love. So don't be discouraged if you can't do the mitzvah. Yes, we have to strive to do it right, but don't think it's all or nothing. Every good deed is an expression of love that Hashem receives and reciprocates. And just to use one other analogy is like, one of the sad things about coronavirus is that you can't see people's smiles. It's very sad. You see people, you see their eyes, and a smile is so important. I was thinking the other day, I hope people don't forget how to smile, because now you don't even bother, because I have a mask. What am I going to smile for, right? I can't wait till everyone gets the vaccine so we can see each other's smiles. It's such a beautiful thing. And the thing about smiles is that, what is a smile? It's a little facial muscle, right? I mean, if I described in technical terms, what's a smile? It's your facial muscles on the two sides of your mouth pulling up. That's technically what it is. So why do people feel so good when you smile at them? You know why? Because the outer technical movement of the lips upward, of the muscles, it's not that, am I happy because I saw your muscles pull upward? That's not what makes me happy. It's that I know that the muscles pulling upward on the two sides of your mouth reflects an emotional feeling that you just had. You were just happy to see me, and therefore your muscles pulled upward. So it's not the muscles pulling upward that makes me happy, it's that you are happy to see me. That's an emotional feeling of love that makes me feel happy. There are many things in life that are a physical manifestation of something that's much, much deeper. And we always have to remember that when we do mitzvot, it's not that we just put a scroll on the door or we lit a Shabbos candle. Okay, we lit a candle, such a big deal. We like candles sometimes during the week in our house too. We like a nice candle burning. Always remember, what we're seeing is just a physical manifestation, which represents something much, much spiritually deeper. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to rush through the next two questions and do it a little more briefly. The fourth question is kosher. For those who eat kosher, who would like to keep kosher or attempt to eat kosher, so we know that, certain things are black and white in the Torah. Don't eat pork, don't eat certain unkosher fish that don't have shellfish, and that's a great start. But the laws of kosher go a lot further than that. The laws of kosher go to the point that when you go to Publix today to shop, and I hope this is a positive, practical thing you can do no matter what level you're on, pretty much every product you see in the supermarket, there's a kosher brand and a non-kosher brand. So I know many people, they're like, okay, if I'm buying chicken, I'm going to buy the kosher chicken because that's a big deal. I'm not going to buy the shellfish, the crab, and the lobster. I'm not going to buy the pork. I'm Jewish. But if I'm looking for a ketchup, or I'm looking for a pasta, or I'm looking for some other benign object, what do I need to look for a kosher symbol? It's like pasta's pasta, ketchup is ketchup. I'm looking for, I'm not joking about this. If your wife sends you, or you go shopping for sunflower seeds, you want to sprinkle a little sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, not sunflower seeds, sesame seeds. You want to put some sesame seeds on your challah. So you want sesame seeds. Well, the racks of things, jars of things, right? So go to your cupboard, go to your pantry, and look, does my sesame seeds have an OU on it? Now, right next to the one that has an OU, there's a brand that doesn't have an OU. Does it really make a difference? Sesame seeds are sesame seeds. Not only that, sesame seeds is a natural thing. Vegetables and fruits don't need to be kosher. They're naturally kosher. So a sesame seed is a sesame seed. I'll give you a more shocking example. If you take out your Zephyr Hill bottle of water in your house, guess what? There's an OU on it, which means that a rabbi went to Zephyr Hill to certify that this water is kosher water. And you're like, water? I go to my tap and I take out water. Why do I need Zephyr Hill kosher water? Can't I buy any bottle of water? Do I really have to look to see if the water bottle has an OU on it? What is this, just a gimmick to make money that the certification company puts certified water? I mean, what's going on here? It really doesn't make sense. So I want to explain to you something very important. And again, it's a lengthy subject. On the normal circular, we would have talked about it for 20 minutes, but now we'll talk about it for 1 minute and you'll delve deeper into it. In Judaism, not only does something have to be kosher, but it cannot have any trace of something that's not kosher in it. So the best example I could think of is someone who's allergic to nuts. Our kids are told, don't even bring nuts to school. Why? Because they could have an allergic reaction even if they, I don't know, touch the nut or the nut touches their food. Even if they don't eat the nut, it could touch their food and they could have allergic reaction. In other words, there's some things that even the smallest residue or trace could have a physical impact. If that's true with allergies, it's surely true with kosher. So therefore, you may buy sesame seeds, but how is those sesame seeds manufactured in the plant? Maybe on those machines, they don't have special machines that manufacture and prepare the sesame seeds. They have machines that run many other items on it. So maybe before they ran the sesame seeds, they ran some other product that had oils or things, and maybe they cleaned the machine with a hose, but they didn't sterilize it like the laws of kashrut require. And there could be one little trace of non-kosher oil or something that gets into your sesame seed from the pig fat oil that just ran through the machine. And that's why Tropicana orange juice has an OU, and you say, or an OK, another famous symbol. There are hundreds of kosher symbols. Someone has to manufacture and say, okay, when you run your orange juice, you're not going to run non-kosher wine on the machine right before the orange juice, that some of that will get into the orange juice, so to speak. And that's why it's important, besides the fact that if you buy the kosher products, you're eating kosher and you're supporting kosher, which is a mitzvah. But also, literally, whether it's orange juice, whether it's sesame seeds, every product you buy, you could do a mitzvah if you buy the kosher product. And it's not just the pork and the other things. And one other thing I want to say is, sometimes people say, well, I don't eat non-kosher, but I'll have a salad in a non-kosher restaurant because it's just a salad. Can't even tell you how many problems there are with that if you really want to keep kosher properly. First of all, again, which oils did they use to dress your salad? There could be really non-kosher substances in your salad just through the oils. Now, what's if you say, well, I'm just going to have a salad with no dressing, hypothetically? Well, one of the laws of kashrut is you're not allowed to eat insects or bugs that could be seen with the naked eye. So when you go to the store, you buy broccoli, you buy berries, you buy any kind of asparagus. Some things have lettuce, romaine lettuce. You have to wash it carefully under the sink. Sometimes use special sprays to cleanse, because if you eat a little bug, and by the way, go look up the FDA department and you'll see how many bugs they say. There are dozens of bugs on the average piece of broccoli. And they tell you strawberries, if you don't clean it properly and cut off the head, the root, you're eating bugs. Now, people do it. No one dies from eating a little tiny bug that they can't barely see. But in Jewish law, there's a prohibition that says you should not eat any creeping, crawling insects. And just like Jews know, I don't eat pork. That's a prohibition in the Torah. Well, the same Torah says not to eat pork, says not to eat creeping, crawling insects. And therefore, you have to cleanse those lettuces and other fruits and vegetables to make sure there's no insects. So a lot of vegetables carry insects. And the pesticides don't kill all of them. And if anyone's washed vegetables, sometimes you'll see something crawling on it. So eating a lettuce that wasn't checked, when you go into a kosher restaurant, the mashgiach checks all the lettuce and the vegetables. Or in your house, you have to check it. In Brooklyn, where I grew up, there were packaged lettuce bags that were already pre-checked, called bodek, which means checked. So you pay for someone to already check it. You don't have to check it. But even a salad, you have to make sure there's no bugs, which you can't do in a non-kosher restaurant. And now we come to our last question. We're running over time. I'll try to just throw it in because we already prepared it. And that is something fun, and that is l'chaim. We know Jews always say l'chaim, l'chaim. We always love to say l'chaim. To life, l'chaim. What is this business that every time we want to say l'chaim, we pick up a cup of wine, or every time we pick up a cup of wine, we say l'chaim? What's the connection between l'chaim and wine? And Jews, whether it's a happy occasion, a wedding, l'chaim, a bar mitzvah, l'chaim, or if it's a yard site, we're celebrating the anniversary of the death of a person, we say l'chaim. What's the business with wine and l'chaim? To life. Furthermore, I know the Sephardim have this custom. Maybe you've seen it. When the one who's making kiddush, he says, Yom HaShishi, and then when he comes to make the blessing in the wine, he says, Savri Maranan. And in the Sephardic community, he'll say, L'chaim. When he says Savri Maranan, maybe you've seen that. What's this L'chaim all about? So one basic answer is that if you look back to the tree of knowledge, according to one opinion of the Talmud, the tree of knowledge that Adam and Eve ate from was a grape. It was wine. That's story number one in the Torah. Story number two is Noah. He gets drunk in the tent after he plants a vineyard, after he comes out of the ark, gets drunk, and one of his kids does something shameful. Then you have the story of Lot in Genesis, where he runs away, he gets drunk, and his daughters sleep with him, thinking there are no more human beings alive, and they have to procreate. So there are a number of stories where alcohol led to negative events. As we know, alcohol can lead to many. We just have to read the news how many times alcohol leads to terrible events. So when we are about to drink alcohol, we say l'chaim. May this drinking of alcohol lead to positive repercussions, to goodness. In other words, alcohol is good. We have to have kiddush on Shabbat. Why? In moderation, it brings joy to the heart. It elevates the joy of Shabbat. It makes us feel less inhibited. And that's a good thing. But we have to remember before we drink the wine, l'chaim. Make sure that when you drink the wine, it doesn't bring out the negative traits of a person, the more base animalistic drives, because now I let loose. I had alcohol, I got drunk, so I did whatever I wanted to do. But I drink in moderation, and it brings to more love. It says, nichnas yayin yatzasod. When wine comes in, the secrets come out. The word yayin equals 70 numerically, and the word sod equals 70. So the secrets come out. But what are the secrets? Some people, when they drink, they become nasty and mean and vengeful, and they say terrible things to people. Other people drink l'chaim, and they kiss everyone, they love everyone. What are the secrets of your heart that are going to come out? And the word l'chaim is 4 letters, ches, yud, yud, mem. The 2 middle letters is yud, yud, God's name. What it's saying is, may the godly soul come out when you drink the wine, not the animalistic soul, because the word life is L-I-F-E. I-F is the middle letters. Everything's random, by chance. Let's just have a good time. Drink, be merry, because tomorrow I'm going to die. That's the random way of looking at life. Nothing has a meaning or a purpose. The Jewish way is l'chaim. I remember God. I remember I have a Jewish soul. I have to fulfill my destiny. The l'chaim brings me closer to Hashem and my fellow man. And one last thought on l'chaim. I once heard from Rabbi Benjamin Blech that I really loved. He said, why do we always say l'chaim to life? So he says something very beautiful. He says, in life, the physical reality of the world is that with the passage of time, things decay. They weaken, they lose strength and value. So you go out and buy a brand new car or a brand new house. It's gorgeous, right? 50 years later, the car is in the dump yard, right? Because physical things decrease in value and in strength and in beauty as time passes. And the truth is with the physical body too, sadly, right? The older you get sometimes, unfortunately, the body slows down, it weakens. Sometimes there are different illnesses that come with age. And so if you look at the physical part of life, time, unfortunately, weakens us. There's one physical thing that time doesn't weaken, but strengthens. It doesn't make it more impoverished, but it makes it richer, and that's wine. The longer a bottle of wine sits, the more rich, the more delicious, the more enchanting it becomes. And so when we say l'chaim to life, what we're saying is, let us remember what life is all about. You know, sadly, and I'll finish on this note, our society celebrates youth. When people get old, they send them to nursing homes or old age homes, out of sight, out of mind. Why? Because we value productivity. When I'm 30 and 40 and 50 and 60, I can make money, I have vigor, I have strength. But some 80-something-year-old person, what are they going to do? They can't work, they can't do anything. Put them in a retirement home. But l'chaim to life means that person, they live 70, 80, 90 years. They're like that wine. They have the richness of life knowledge, of experience, of everything they overcame to get to where they are. These are the people who will be in the forefront, because we can learn the most from these people. Who are we going to learn from? The 20-year-old who never tasted life, or the 90-year-old person who has so much wisdom? And by the way, I'm going to make an advertisement now. On Thursday night, we're having Dr. Edith Eger on Zoom. 94 years old, survived Auschwitz. Besides that, she wrote the book, The Chosen, The Choice, and The Gift. These are the people we want to learn from. Like wine, the older we get, the richer we get. The more depth we have, the more flavor we have, the more texture we have, the more spiritually intoxicating we can be. And therefore, it teaches us to not look, sometimes it comes to people's birthdays and people are like, they're like ashamed to have a birthday. They're like, I don't want to tell anyone how old I am. Oh yeah, I'm already 50. Oh yeah, I'm 60. I'm 70. Oh yeah, like that. They feel terrible. I have a round number now, a new decade. Judaism says, raise that glass and say l'chaim. You're 100, l'chaim. You know why? Because 100 is like a bottle of wine that's 100 years old. That person has so much more to give, so much more to teach us. And that's why we raise the wine, because wine doesn't decrease in its flavor and taste and richness. It increases as the passage of life goes along. So those are our questions for today. We really don't have time for questions, but wish everyone a wonderful day, a Shavua Tov, and I know, God willing, maybe you'll join us on Tuesday for our Torah class, and most importantly, of course, we have a women's class on Wednesday, and a little surprise, our daughter Hindi will be giving the women's class from Israel. The Zoom class for the women on Wednesday will be given by Hindi from Israel. So if you want to feel a connection to Israel, she'll be broadcasting live from Israel. And then, of course, I hope to see everyone on Zoom Thursday night with this incredible woman called the ballerina from Auschwitz, Dr. Edith Eger. And you still have time if you haven't read The Choice or The Gift, her 2 books. She wrote her first best-selling book at the age of 92. So you could still go out and get The Choice and read it so you'll be prepared for Thursday night Zoom. Wish everyone a beautiful day, a Shavua Tov, a good week ahead, and we will be in touch. Take good care and all the best. Bye.